Because even before, like, she went on for like 45 minutes and she got in 12 mils of milk, and everything was, and then she got in the rest by the feeding tube, and then she went back to breastfeeding because she actually wanted more milk than what they were giving her. I noticed that she wanted about 30 mils and she was getting like 22, because if you let her breastfeed with the nipple shield, she would get 30 mils. Mind you, I wasn't producing much more anyways. I was producing 30 mils in one breast and the other one was just doing like 15 mils at that point. So I wasn't doing much more than 30, but supposedly she was only getting 22 anyways. Her little tummy was getting more and more puffy at that point, so I was very very scared at that point and concerned. I wanted to talk to the doctors, and I did talk to the doctor, and they said they will consider not giving her the oil. On August 6th, she got her first bath in an actual bathtub, because before it was just a sponge bath. But that was her first, and it was just so cute. Her little tummy was extremely puffy, which was sad. But it was a nice experience to have her first bath. She was 1,613 grams at that point, and so I talked to the doctor again, and they said they're gonna talk to some kind of dietitianist to see if they can stop the MCT oil, because I'm like, and look at her tummy, it's so full. She can't fall asleep, like she's crying, she's just about to fall asleep and she starts crying. You could tell that she's in pain, and it was all digestive issue, like you could tell, it was so obvious. And that means to say her tummy was so crazy bloated, and I was getting super annoyed because it was so obvious that she can't digest the MCT oil. And I have the same thing. I mean, I can digest the fat really well, so this was so obvious to me and to everyone else that it's the MCT oil. And the nurses told me that this happened to other babies as well. Also, when I finally got the nipple shield on the 7th of August and she started to eat really well, they told me that I can come 3 times a day to breastfeed her. So I was doing 12, noon, 7 p.m. and midnight, because it was the only way I can get some sleep in between, because don't forget that I still had to pump every 2 hours. When she breastfed, I still had to pump after that as well, just to keep, because I wasn't producing enough milk, and I was trying everything. I did get, by that time I did get on the medication. They gave me the lowest dose, so, and they did that increased it to the 30 ml on one breast and 50 ml on the other breast, and actually I never went over that. So that was the max that I ever was able to produce, but that was with the medication. So, and when I tried to ask for bigger doses, but my doctor refused, so I couldn't get on higher dose. By this time, she completely refused the pacifier because it's not the breast. Completely, she never takes it at this point. Like if they try to give her pacifier, she just takes it out and throws it on the floor. Her tummy was getting worse. The doctors kept ignoring my when I told them not to give her the MCT. And this is August 9. This is when I started to notice that she's just looking, she looks sick at that point. So I was breastfeeding her 3 times a day, and she just like when I went in at midnight, she just looked completely lifeless, completely sick, and I complained to the nurse. And when the next day, August 10th, I was going in for the 12 o'clock noon breastfeeding, then they told me that they think that she's sick. They did an x-ray, and there's a lot of gas in her tummy, and they're not gonna feed her for 24 hours, and we will see what happens in 24 hours. But the plan at that point was not to feed her for 24 hours. I told them that it's the additive. I told them, they said not to feed it, and then may just go back slowly with the additives. And at that point I was just like, whatever, just don't talk to me, I don't want the additives. But I'm not gonna argue with that right now. I'm gonna argue with it when they start it back. They had to put her in an IV until then, unfortunately. And they were thinking that maybe she got sick, so they also put her on antibiotics, and they were taking blood test and urine test. And I was there for the urine test, and I haven't realized that they used to use a catheter to get it. And it was so painful. I was sitting there and they spent 15 minutes trying to get the catheter in to get the urine out when they realized that it's too thick and they need a thinner one. I could have basically killed them, both nurses right there, because for 15 minutes they were doing that to my baby, and she was crying like hell. We knew it that we all knew it that she doesn't have any infections, and actually the doctors screwed it up with the additives. But the doctors, well, actually after this whole infection supposedly went away, well, they never, every test came back completely negative, so they could never actually confirm there was an infection. There was never any signs of an infection. She didn't have a temperature. There was nothing at all. So after this whole infection incident, even some doctors agreed that okay, we were probably right, and it was just... She's the one, by the way, if anyone's wondering what's this noise in the background, it's the baby. She's just backing. But basically this was one of the biggest issues I faced in the hospital, because I just wanted to go and squeeze. Basically I just wanted to squeeze the life out of her. Anyways, this was a really hard time for us because she was on IV and she didn't get any food. And she was hungry, like even though she got everything through the IV, she was hungry, so she was crying all the time. They cut her off of her, like she was back to being completely normal, like within 24 hours she was back to her normal self. But they thought that she's having an infection, so she had to be on antibiotics for a few days. It was just really annoying because we couldn't cuddle with her because she was hooked up to an IV, and it was just the most annoying time. And so they did an X-ray, and then they said that her there's a lot of gas in there. So I was crying so much. She's on the IV, she gets everything through the IV, but she still feels hungry. So she was always crying that she's hungry, and you couldn't help her because she couldn't eat anything until the gas came out of her tummy. They also put an extra tube in her that was just for the gas to come out. And they couldn't explain it. They were like, oh, I don't know what happened, we don't know why it's like that. I mean, she could have some kind of colitis, she can have an infection of her tummy. And I'm like, people, it's just the freaking additives that you put in the breast milk. I know it. The nurses know it. I think you doctors know it too. You just don't want to tell me. You just don't want to say that, oh, okay, you were right and we made a mistake, and your baby is suffering because you made a mistake, right? So yeah, it was the worst, one of the worst parts of our hospital stay, and this is what's gonna stay in my mind forever. It's not that they, like she was born at 28 weeks, she needed that help, yes, but I can't believe that they've done this. And I actually talked to nurses, and they've done this before, like they've done this to other babies too, and it's the same thing. They do this, they add the additives. Some babies can take it perfectly well, and Yasmin, and some babies just can't digest it, and that is all good as long as you realize it and you stop giving it to the baby, and that's it. You just say that, hey, we made a mistake, your baby is not like the other babies, this doesn't work, let's do something else. But that's not what happens. What they say, they actually don't ever admit that they made a mistake. Okay, they admitted maybe a month later that I was probably right, maybe a month later, okay? But at this point, they never admitted that it was their mistake, that they made a mistake. They were blaming an infection. She was on antibiotics for a week for no reason whatsoever. They stopped feeding her. She was always hungry. She was always crying. Obviously, whenever I tried to cuddle with her, or whenever I was close, she could smell the milk. She was crying even more. And she was just suffering. Like, you could tell she couldn't sleep because she was always hungry. It doesn't matter that she was getting everything through the IV. She was always hungry. And she had to go through all this, and they were blaming an infection that was proven to be not true, because every single test they've done came back negative, saying she has no issues. And I said she had no temperature. Her tummy was back to normal because they were not giving her additives in the breast milk while they were starving her. But we had to go through all this because they didn't listen to me, which was really annoying. And for me to go to the hospital and just see her suffering for this few days, that for me, I felt so helpless. And I just made her feel worse every time I was there because she was smelling the milk. I was dripping milk, like she was crying. So I went, I could hardly see her. Like, it was like, oh, I felt so helpless, and I felt so guilty that I let her get into that position. I felt so angry with the doctors that you can't imagine. Anyways, I'm not gonna talk about that because I think I made myself clear. We basically didn't really cuddle with her because of this whole infection thing happening. So there was a few days when we just went in there, looked at her, she was crying, and then we went home. But at least we saw that her tummy was getting better. She was getting x-rays every 2 days or every day to see if the gas is going, and they said they're obviously not going to start feeding her until the gas is completely gone from her tummy. They started to feed her again, but with just like 1 milliliter in every 3 hours. This is when they actually switched her to every 3 hours, but every 2 milliliters, and then slowly increasing that. But they only started to feed her because I gave them help, basically. Because I told them, you know, like, this is all just because of your freaking additives. Like, this is it, and you're starving my baby. And it was just so painful to even hear her not be able to eat. And then they finally gave in and started with 1 milliliter, which was not solving much, but the baby was a little bit happier. And then I started to breastfeed her again on the August 15th. So she's almost 2 months at this point. My battery is dying again, yay. So I'm gonna finish with this finish this video a little bit later, and I'm finish the story a little bit later. I'm finishing the video right now, and I'm gonna see you guys next time.